Welcome back to another episode of Pixel Peak. We're glad you could return and watch after such a long hiatus.
And while the whole country is on house arrest, we had been reporting on the coronavirus for quite a while, but I don't think any of us expected it to get to the point where it is now.
Luckily, we are still able to provide you with everything Pixel Peak normally had to offer, and more. Starting with this week's news, we have some surprising statistics on Animal Crossing New Horizons' impact on Switch sales, and how it's performing with both new and old fans of the series.
And just as some games are rising in popularity, some are unfortunately falling. Niantic developer Pokemon Go and many other GPS-based games is taking a unique approach to how their games will stay alive, something you won't want to miss.
And of course, the games industry is still experiencing a lot of disruption because of COVID-19, and we'll wrap up all the news about that this week in a nice bow for you. A figurative bow.
We'll also wrap up our thoughts on Animal Crossing New Horizons in this week's games review presented by Nintendo Analyst Ruby Hall. So many bugs and fishes and clothing and animals and dead and...
Okay, come on, Bryce, leave it to Ruby. She knows what she's talking about, and she'll be sharing even more of her thoughts in this week's analysis. The first Nintendo Direct of the year just dropped, and there's a lot we have to ask her about it.
Good point. Sounds like we got a lot to cover this week. So let's get started. I'm Bryce Gates.
And I'm Sydney Thompson, and we hope you enjoy your stay here on
Pixel Peak.
The game Half-Life 2 Episode 2 was released in 2007. After 13 years, the series has continued with Half-Life Alyx, which was released this year. Questions have been asked to the game designer Robin Walker about the next game, wondering if it'll take another 13 years. With this question, Walker explains to Polygon why it took so long for Half-Life Alyx to be finished. The main struggle they were up against was finding a way to build an interesting experience for the player with a big technological leap. Walker even states in the interview, "It's hard to sit down and say, I'm going to write code on that today." When the team made the VR prototype, they thought the playthrough would take 15 minutes using their assets, AI, and hand models from Half-Life 2 and Counter-Strike Global Offensive, but instead it took much longer than expected. The 15 minutes became 45 minutes. After the playthrough, Walker was able to know how to write the code, and that making Half-Life Alyx was possible. While it's too soon to guess the ending of Half-Life Alyx, the world of the game has become much more expansive, and the series can go in many directions. Walker was careful with his words when asked about what's next, and said that at this time, Valve doesn't know. No decisions have been made about what's next, and that there is no reason to be doing so just yet. Walker did give hope for the future and stated that it won't take another 13 years to make.
On March 20th, Animal Crossing New Horizons was released, and the game is already breaking records. In Japan, the game has sold 1.88 million copies in 3 days, becoming the fastest-selling Nintendo Switch game in the country. The sales record in Japan used to be held by Pokemon Sword and Shield with 1.36 million copies sold of both games, and then by Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with 1.24 million copies before that. While the release of Animal Crossing, with the release of Animal Crossing New Horizon, there has also been a spike in Nintendo Switch console sales, Japan selling about 400,000 consoles in the past week alone. New games means new features, and players were excited to learn back in February about islands being able to have up to 8 residents. However, the first resident seems to be the only one that is able to have access to the game's complete feature set. This has angered fans, and this anger has spilled over to the reviews of the game. At this time, there are over 160 negative reviews, many giving the game a rating of 0. This seems to be a problem that Nintendo will be addressing in the future. And while players have found things that they do not like about the game, it doesn't stop everyone from playing. The tarantulas that players usually run away from or capture have gotten a new interesting use in a new addition to the Animal Crossing series. Players have been building traps, mazes, and even finding tarantula exploits. Some players have set up a series of pitfalls to escape the tarantulas, while others set up pitfalls and rocks in order to confuse the creatures. It appears that based on the programming, it is pretty easy to take advantage of the tarantulas. While these creative players, they have found many ways to earn lots of money from selling tarantulas.
Due to the corona pandemic, Niantic has postponed events and has been tweaking game rules for the current situation. However, the game is still not compatible with the daily situation of players, and with self-distancing and self-isolation going into full swing, people have been running out of Pokeballs for playing Pokemon Go because they are unable to go out and get more Pokeballs from Pokestops, thus making it hard to play the game during the crisis of fighting boredom. Niantic has quickly adapted to the situation and offers relief to fans by selling both Pokeballs and instants for a much lower price. A 100 pack of Pokeballs only costs 1 Pokecoin. Niantic says they plan to continue these pack bundles at super cheap prices for players to stock up on items. The current pricing on instants and Pokeballs will continue until Monday, March 30th. And for players that are able to make it to Pokestops, the number of gifts that a player can hold has been increased to 20, and they can open up to 30 gifts per day. Finally, players can get 3 times the amount of Stardust for the first catch of the day. These changes will be in place until further notice.
Sony Interactive Entertainment is reducing download speeds for the PlayStation Network in an effort to help preserve access for the entire internet community. While people are staying indoors for self-isolation and relying on access to the internet more in their daily life, SIE, or Sony Interactive Entertainment, President and CEO Jim Ryan announced this decision on the PlayStation blog last Tuesday, saying that the PlayStation is working with internet providers in the United States and Europe in an effort to ensure internet stability during the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Ryan followed saying, "We believe it is important to do our part to address internet stability concerns as an unprecedented number of people are practicing social distancing and are becoming more reliant on internet access." Ryan did add that the bandwidth for multiplayer and other network features would not be affected during this process. Ryan ended his statement saying, "Players may experience somewhat slower or delayed game downloads, but will still enjoy robust gameplay. We appreciate the support and understanding from our community, and they're doing their part as we take these measures in an effort to preserve access for everyone." This decision by Sony follows similar moves by streaming services like Netflix and Disney+. And this is in order to reduce the strain placed on Europe's internet infrastructure.
Amid the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, the gaming industry continues to be affected. The Taipei Game Show has officially been postponed by event organizers. This is the second time the show has been postponed in the past few months. Originally scheduled for February 6th through the 9th, it was postponed in late January to June 25th through the 28th. Organizers noted that many attendees would not be able to make it anyways given the ongoing border controls. Some events are being moved online and can include the showcase for company announcements. Steam, Valve's PC gaming marketplace, has hit a new record number of users over the weekend, with more than 22 million players logging on amid social distancing and self-quarantine. CS:GO remains to be the most played game, reaching 1.1 million players last Sunday, March 22nd. What is more interesting is that instead of playing games that make up Steam charts such as Dota 2 and PUBG, players are moving toward different games such as Doom Eternal or 2013's Tomb Raider reboot. With lockdowns on the rise in other countries for the next month or so, it is likely we will continue to see an increase in players on different platforms.
In an effort to combat school closures around the world because of the coronavirus, Microsoft has announced that it will use Minecraft to offer free educational content to children. In a blog post, Xbox boss Phil Spencer announced that there is a new education category in the Minecraft marketplace that gives parents and their children a chance to download a selection of free in-game creations to aid home learning. This features some of the lessons from Minecraft Education Edition, such as a tour of the International Space Station or the inside of a human eye. It also includes educational worlds made by members of the community and covers topics such as renewable energy, Greek history, and marine biology. The collection launched as a free download last Tuesday and will be available until June 30th and will be available on all versions of Minecraft. Spencer also reiterated that the Xbox One has comprehensive family settings that will limit the amount of screen time children will have while at home. Finally, Nintendo of America has donated over 9,000 respirator face masks to the emergency services in North Bend, Washington. The N95 particulate respiratory masks are the most requested items for the first responders and healthcare providers amid the coronavirus pandemic. A Nintendo representative said that the masks were originally purchased for the emergency preparedness planning, but knew that they were needed elsewhere in the current climate. A statement was released by City of North Bend saying that this crisis is unprecedented. The safety and security of community members is paramount in our daily mission. The communities served by City of North Bend and East Side Fire and Rescue deeply appreciate the generous donation from Nintendo. That's all we have for this week's news, so let's pass it on to Nintendo Analyst Ruby Hall for this week's game review of Animal Crossing: New Horizons.
Animal Crossing New Horizons is truly a breath of fresh air. Only a few minutes into the game, and my first thought was, wow, I needed this. This game is one of the most relaxing gaming experiences I've ever had. You get to do everything at your own pace. Objectives exist, but they're not necessarily required, so you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. This game is loaded with content, so let's get started. Firstly, this game looks absolutely beautiful. I'm impressed that Nintendo could make a game look this good on a Switch, which is a platform that's typically notorious for making graphical sacrifices to help games run. Everything from the characters to the water to the environment are all just breathtaking to see. Playing in docked mode really complements the detail put into this game, making Animal Crossing's return to the big screen a triumphant one. Regarding gameplay, New Horizons brings many new things to the table. You start the game by moving to a deserted island. There, you are the resident representative, and you get to take a role on the island similar to the role of mayor in New Leaf. The choices are expanded from New Leaf, such as being able to pick where each individual villager lives on your island, where shops go, but keeps older options, such as public works projects. If you're ever unsatisfied where certain buildings are, you can always go to resident services to move them around, for a fee of course. Speaking of, resident services serves as a hub for many activities around the island. It starts out as a tent, but later it can expand into a building, increasing the amount of features offered. In this building, you can talk to Tom Nook about expanding your house or rearranging buildings. And there's Isabelle who can help manage your villagers, as well as the kiosk, where you can buy special items, redeem Nook miles, and repay your debt to Tom Nook. One of the best new systems in New Horizons has to be the Nook miles. They're little bite-sized quests where you get to earn Nook miles, which are points that you can spend on various rewards. Virtually anything you do can net you some Nook miles. Catching fish and bugs, selling to Timmy and Tommy, visiting others' islands, all of those earn you miles and more. Another feature are the island tours you can go on. If you earn enough Nook miles, you can redeem them for a ticket to go on an island tour. If you take your ticket to Orville in the airport, you'll be taken to a randomly selected island to go on a little adventure. On these islands, you can meet new villagers to invite, get some exotic fruit, and get a bunch of resources. It is possible to repeat islands on rare occasions, but the layout will be entirely reset, so there's no need to worry about what you did on your last island. Islands have different rarities. It is more common to get an island with the same fruit as your original island, but there are some rarer islands, such as the Bamboo Islands and the elusive Infinite Tarantula Island. After leaving, there is no easy way back to the island you left, as another Nook ticket will take you to another random island. The other biggest feature this game brings is the DIY crafting system. This new addition has you gather your resources to craft various items, such as decorations and tools to use around the island. To craft these items, you'll need to get the DIY recipe. You can get these in many ways, such as buying them, getting them from your villagers around the island, or finding them washed ashore. One interesting mechanic the DIY system adds is durability for tools. This will have you using resources to replace these tools when they break. There are ways to have these tools last longer, such as upgrading them from their flimsy version to a stronger version. It does feel bad to break a tool, however, and it's a bit of a hassle to have a fishing session interrupted just to go and craft a new fishing rod. Speaking of tools, they still take up a substantial amount of space in the inventory. Now that they've added more tools like the vaulting pole and ladder, tools take up more space than ever before in your inventory, and they do somewhat feel like a burden to carry, even with the greatly expanded inventory space. However, the new tool wheel makes tool selection a breeze compared to going through all of them individually, as it was in older games. The customization has been greatly expanded upon. There are plenty of new clothing options and hairstyles for your character, and you now have complete control over how your character looks. There's no quiz that determines your character's appearance, in the beginning of the game, like how it was in older games such as New Leaf. You can change your style whenever you want by using a mirror in your house to whatever your heart desires. So you can change your facial features, skin color, hairstyle, hair color, whenever you want. Aside from these newer systems and expanded upon older systems, the classic mainstays from the original games are still around. The multiplayer is back and better than ever. You get to catch bugs and fish for blathers, build up your island with new villagers and shops, and be in eternal debt to Tom Nook, of course. Overall, I feel that New Horizons is a definitive Animal Crossing experience. I highly recommend this game to everyone. I give this my rating of top of the mountain.
Last Wednesday, Nintendo finally gave fans what they've been asking for, a non-specific direct presentation. Here with us to share their thoughts and tell us what we can look forward to from Nintendo this year is Nintendo Analyst Ruby Hall. Thanks for joining us, Ruby.
Thanks for having me.
So, on May 29th, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is coming to the Nintendo Switch. What features set this title apart from the original Xenoblade Chronicles game on the Nintendo Wii?
Moving away from the Wii and away from the new 3DS port, Xenoblade Chronicles has had to adapt yet another control scheme. And plus, they're updating graphics and adding on an additional expansion through some DLC.
Flagship 2K franchises such as Borderlands, BioShock, and XCOM were announced to be released for the Switch in May. What's interesting about AAA third-party games coming to Switch over recent years?
It is kind of unusual to see these games on the Nintendo console. Nintendo isn't really known for hosting games like first-person shooters. Though it is interesting to see all these third-party developers port these more last-gen games, like Xbox 360 era kind of games, over to the Nintendo Switch, because the Nintendo Switch is about that tier when it comes to hardware. It has the best portability to it since GameCube, because it's a lot easier to port because it's a lot more stronger in the graphical department. And a lot of indie games led up to this popularity. Really, what's making the Nintendo Switch thrive on the eShop is a lot of the indie games. Yeah, hits like Untitled Goose Game that become super popular, plus a lot of older fan favorites. So the Switch is really picking up a lot of steam.
Animal Crossing New Horizons just launched last week and was announced to be getting a special event around Easter. What fun features does this event include?
During the event, you will have a new character show up. And during this new event, you can find these Easter eggs where you can fish them up, you can dig them out of the ground, and then you can eventually make new furniture with them and new items. So it adds in some new content that for limited time items.
A fighter from ARMS is joining Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as the first fighter in DLC Pack 2. Considering the original game is from 2017, do you think this is an outdated addition to Smash Fighter Collection?
I feel like the timing for an ARMS fighter is kind of awkward, because if they were to add in an ARMS fighter, I personally would have expected it earlier, like during the game's release or in the first couple of DLC packs, because there's kind of been a lack of news, hype, or even really people playing ARMS. There's only been a sparing amount of in-person ARMS tournaments to begin with, and none of them has really been too recent. So seeing an ARMS fighter join is exciting for the ARMS community and a lot of people around there. I think it could be really interesting for Smash in general, adding such a unique fighting style.
Nintendo has changed up their announcements by holding specialty direct presentations for series like Animal Crossing and Pokemon. Have you been happy with how Nintendo has been making announcements recently?
I think Nintendo has been handling their announcements very well. These Animal Crossings and the Pokemon Directs have been right before release, so it really hypes up their new games. And I really like these in-between smaller directs highlighting all these smaller games. I think it's a pretty good balance for now.
This Nintendo Direct Mini gave us lots of information on games we should expect to see in the future, but no news on Breath of the Wild 2. What can we expect to see of the game coming up, considering the theorized release date of 2021?
Well, there's been many rumors around Breath of the Wild 2. I am a little surprised that they didn't cover it, considering it seems that's going to be a really big upcoming game. I'd hope to see more around E3 season, even though the event isn't happening. I still anticipate a big direction from Nintendo, and I hope they cover it more there.
Is there anything specific from Nintendo that you're looking forward to that wasn't mentioned in this Direct Mini?
Well, first thing, they didn't really talk about their replacement for E3. I do anticipate a Direct, but I don't know how that's going to change. I think one of the biggest things from this Direct that we can take away from is Atlus is working more closely with Nintendo, because they announced their port of Catherine Full Body, which is one of their biggest games that they're porting to Nintendo. And the future of this partnership can really be fruitful if they start bringing over Persona games, which is Atlus's one of their biggest franchises. They already brought over a Persona 5 spin-off game. So I think seeing a mainline Persona game on Nintendo Switch is not too far off. Plus, they could have talked about Mother 3, but that wasn't included.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ruby. That's all we have for this week's analysis, so let's move on over to Sydney and Bryce to wrap up this week's episode.
And that wraps up this week's episode. It's so heartwarming that we're still going strong, even though we are now miles apart.
That's because we have such a dedicated crew to keep the show rolling at a studio. Thanks to writers Jalen Curitan and Rebecca Larson, Nintendo Analyst Ruby Hall, and producers Tanner Mazel, Elise Taylor, Bianca Bortoluzzi, and moi for bringing back Season 4 strong.
We still have some additional content coming your way before the semester ends, so keep up to date with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us at Pixel Peak App TV on those platforms, and on the App TV YouTube channel.
We'll be streaming new episodes there at 3 p.m. on Wednesdays, as well as on watchapptv.com, SkyBest Channels 20 and 1020, Spectrum Channel 198, and on App State's Campus Television Channel 23.3.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed your stay here on
On
Pixel
Pixel
Peak.